for a better understanding of the world around you, for a greater knowledge of the world you live in. Wolf and Dessau in downtown Fort Wayne and downtown Huntington brings the Screen News Digest, a chapter of living history, into your classroom.
The year is 1893. Imperial China lives in the twilight years of the Manchu dynasty. And in the picturesque village of Shaosan in Hunan province, a son is born to a wealthy landowner and his wife. The house will become one day a communist shrine, for this is the birthplace of Mao Tse-Tung. China into which Mao is born is a backward, impotent, defenseless nation, an easy prey for the world powers who have stripped away territories and trading rights. In 100 years, China has lost an area equal in size to almost all of Europe. England has taken Hong Kong, Burma, Sikkim, and parts of Tibet in southwest China. Russia has seized slices of Manchuria, Mongolia, and Xinjiang. France has laid claim to all of Indochina. And Japan has annexed Korea, Formosa, and the Ryukyu and Pescadores Islands. Entering the 20th century, China is a restless nation, seeking change, demanding new leadership. It finds both in Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the founding father of the Chinese Republic, and an ardent admirer of Abraham Lincoln. On October 10, 1911, the Chinese people rise in revolt and overthrow the corrupt Manchu dynasty. The scholarly Dr. Sun seeks to establish a democratic form of government in China, a government patterned after the United States, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Attempts to make China a democratic nation are hampered, however, by reactionaries, restorationists, warlords. And amid the chaos and unrest, the Chinese Communist Party is born. Mao Tse-Tung attends the founding conference in 1921. For much of the next 13 years, Mao and his supporters will live as outlaws, hunted and harassed. Then in 1934, the Red Leader begins his legendary Long March in search of sanctuary in Shenxi province. These remarkable motion pictures, many of them never before seen in America, document the incredible hardships of the 6,000-mile march. Following a tortuous roundabout route, the communists cross 18 mountain ranges, some of them higher than the European Alps. At the start, there are 180,000 marchers in the communist caravan, curling across the hills and plains of China for 50 miles and more. But casualties are enormous. 3/4 of the marchers die en route. The survivors press on, and when they reach their mountain sanctuary, Mao himself is on hand to salute and welcome them. He is, as he has been throughout the Long March, in complete command. From this humble beginning in the caves of Shenxi, the communists will grow and multiply, reach out and conquer. A man of the soil, Mao Tse-Tung believes that the ultimate power in China belongs to the peasants who make up 80% of its population. And so Mao does something that no military leader in China has ever done. He sends his soldiers into the fields to work beside the peasants, to help them, and to talk to them of the new China, the communist China in which landlords will be made to give up their farms to the peasants. Chiang Kai-Shek is aware of the growing pro-communist sentiment in China. He knows it is a threat as great, if not greater, than the aggressive ambitions of militant Japan. For Chiang and for nationalist China, the sands of time are running out. Shanghai, 1937. The blow falls on the helpless city. The Japanese strike. In this hour of grave peril, Chiang Kai-Shek must accept help wherever and however it is offered. And so an old enemy, Mao Tse-Tung, becomes a new ally. For 8 agonizing years, China and her people are cruelly punished. Publicly, Mao pledges his support to Chiang Kai-Shek, but privately, he orders his followers to work for the overthrow of the nationalist government. Mao is promoted in communist propaganda as a popular anti-Japanese patriot. Marching into battle, the Red troops spread the glory of Mao Tse-Tung and the greatness of the communist cause. Passing through the countryside, the soldiers carry propaganda slogans and banners on their backs. As the war goes on, Mao's guerrilla army grows from 40,000 to 1 million men. In 1945, Japan surrenders. China has won the war. But it will lose the peace and the very freedom it fought so long to defend and preserve. The communists have been strengthened by the acquisition of Japanese weapons and ammunition, seized with Russian assistance. Now is the time for Mao to launch his so-called War of National Liberation. Unlike the Russian Revolution, during which the Bolsheviks seized control of the cities and then overran the countryside, Mao Tse-Tung's conquest of mainland China begins with his followers gaining control of the rural areas. And then, one by one, the major cities are surrounded and isolated, engulfed and brought under communist domination. Mao Tse-Tung has accomplished in 4 years what the Japanese could not do in 8. He has conquered China and brought 700 million people under communist control. The crowds in the streets of Peking, not knowing nor dreaming of what lies ahead, hail Mao Tse-Tung as the savior who will lead their homeland into a communist paradise. On October 1st, 1949, the birth of the People's Republic of China is proclaimed and celebrated. Mao Tse-Tung is there, and so are 300,000 Chinese, the sea of humanity, wave after awesome wave. With the War of National Liberation won, Mao Tse-Tung reveals to the world that he is no gentle agrarian reformer. In the first 5 years of the People's Republic, 800,000 anti-communists, by Mao's own admission, are tried and executed, and millions more die from imprisonment and assignment to so-called labor reform camps. In foreign affairs, Mao proclaims himself a disciple of Joseph Stalin, and he is quickly given an honored place among the communist leaders of the satellite nations. All is harmony between the Chinese dragon and the Russian bear. It is not long before the two giants of the communist world, controlling together more than 1 billion lives, sign a 30-year treaty of friendship, alliance, and assistance. Soviet Russia and Communist China look forward to great things. On Formosa, renamed Taiwan, 10 million Chinese remain free. Fleeing the mainland, Chiang Kai-Shek has established a government in opposition to the communists. Chung signs a mutual defense treaty with the United States and vows one day to liberate mainland China. Madame Chung makes a remarkable prophecy.
Russia will never know one day of peace in China. Russia will never own China.
In mainland China, Mao Tse-Tung orders a great leap forward in agriculture. Men and women from 14 to 50 are organized into so-called communes. Mao believes that mind can overcome matter, that science is useless superstition. He promises to transform the People's Republic into an instant paradise through the sheer force of numbers. It is the most colossal and awesome experiment with human life in all of recorded history. The result is chaos. The Chinese farmers plant too deeply and sow too early. They use the wrong crops and inferior seeds. They spread too much fertilizer or not enough. They flood the fields, exhaust the soil, and farm production, instead of going up, goes down. Mao Tse-Tung's folly continues to drain the strength of a tired, poverty-ridden people. Seeking an outlet for the frustrations of Red China's restless millions, Mao launches bitter attacks on Western imperialism, and more his followers denounce Russia as a turncoat, betrayer of the revolutionary spirit, and even lackey of the West. China now builds herself, not Russia, as the true friend of the have-nots, the guide of the newly emerging nations in Africa, Asia, Latin America. The Soviets are referred to as another imperialist country, out to defraud and mislead China's non-Caucasian brothers around the world. In alliances, meetings, agreements with Asian leaders and nations, Communist China preaches its own brand of revolution through people's wars of national liberation. Not all embrace the communist creed. In Indonesia, riots rocked the country in 1965. Students ransacked the Chinese embassy, and Sukarno is stripped of his power. Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah becomes a good friend and faithful ally of Mao Tse-Tung, and in turn is greeted warmly on his state visits to Peking. President Liu Shaoqi and Premier Zhou Enlai lead the dignitaries that welcome the African leader behind the bamboo curtain. But Nkrumah's days are numbered too, and in 1966, the Ghanaian leader is driven into exile by a popular revolution. Communist China and Mao Tse-Tung have lost another ally, suffered another setback. In Peking, as reports spread of growing unrest and discontent within the People's Republic, a new militant force called the Red Guard rallies to the defense of Mao Tse-Tung. A cultural revolution is launched. Enemies of Mao, real and imagined, are denounced and disgraced. In these timely motion pictures from behind the bamboo curtain, the Screen News Digest provides a rare and graphic glimpse of the Red Guard, 3 million strong, jamming the gate of Heavenly Peace Square in Peking. Despite the massive show of strength, turmoil continues to rack communist China. Each day brings new challenges to Mao Tse-Tung, new reports of violent anti-government demonstrations, and in some areas, actual revolt against Mao and his followers. Mao is in his 70s now, and a new figure, Lin Biao, emerges as his heir apparent. Attacking the Russian embassy in Peking, the Red Guard drives an even deeper wedge between the dragon and the bear. The demonstrations are so violent, the feelings so intense, that the families of embassy personnel must be recalled to Moscow. Despite the turmoil, China pursues its blueprint for world revolution. Lin Biao's battle plan calls for communist-supported people's wars to sap the strength and undermine the will of nations to remain free. A new generation of Chinese youth is drilled and trained, regimented and tutored in the revolutionary spirit of the motherland. Only the future can tell what the dragon will do, what the end will be. But that end will surely shape, for good or for evil, the fate and destiny of man and his world.
To widen your horizons, to stimulate your interest in things going on about you, Wolf and Dessauer, one of America's great department stores, has presented the Screen News Digest as a public service.